Hello and welcome to Football League World TV. My name is Ned Holmes. I'm a writer at Football League World, and today I'm joined by Ryan Loftus from LDN Footie Scene and the Millwall Acton podcast. How are you doing today, Ryan?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure, really. Yeah, well, obviously it's the Millwall club takeover today, so we're focusing really on the South London club. But before we get started, just a reminder to sort of like and subscribe to Football League World TV on YouTube, and also just send in your comments, your predictions. What have you guys made of Millwall's start of the season? Because we want to hear it from you. Well, it's been a little bit of a shaky start to the season, Ryan, really. I think two seasons prior to this of real progress under Gary Rowett, and then a shaky first few months, you'd say. But 2 wins ahead of the international break, and things are looking a lot more positive. 11th for the table, a 7-game unbeaten run. What were your expectations heading into the season, and what have you made of the start so far?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been shaky. I think this season, since Rowett's come in, the chat has been about this 3-year plan of Millwall really pushing for the playoffs, and we looked like we were getting there, and we were looking to building a team that can challenge for the playoffs, with form going awry occasionally over the last couple of seasons. But we looked like we were maybe on for a playoff push this season. And that excitement went quite quickly, to be honest, with same problems as last season. We started the season with 2-1 draws that were just so familiar to Millwall fans. And then the back-to-back losses against Fulham and Cardiff really, really changed the atmosphere. And you almost got the sense that atmosphere and attitude towards Rowett perhaps was starting to change at the Den. But obviously 2-1 win against Blackpool just before the international break, and really since then it's been a bit of a turnaround. Obviously the two wins in between the 2 international breaks that we've got, against Bristol City and Barnsley, slightly changing the mood now. We're starting to win the games that we have been drawing historically, and it is changing around. I still think we have a decent squad, but what I think the most frustrating thing for Millwall fans is that, we'll talk about it later, it's the problems are very familiar. It's been the same kind of issues for the last couple of seasons now. And, it's hard to see how that's going to change with the personnel and the management that we have.
Absolutely. I mean, you touched on it a little there. So I guess we'll speak about it now. Millwall seems to be plagued by those same issues. I think it was 17 draws in the Championship last season, the most of any club. And this season, it's 6 already. Again, the most that they're on for, I think, even more than they had last year. Is there something that you put that down to, the inability really to find that killer blow? Is it down to a lack of a consistent goal scorer? Is it more a sort of psychological thing? What do you think, really?
I think definitely creating chances is the problem. I think Rowett said before, I think probably a season or 2 ago, that we have to work really hard to score a goal. And that is true. I think earlier, a couple of seasons ago, most of our goals were coming from set pieces, or a lot of them. That seemed to dry up a bit. And we just lack certain creativity. Our striking last year was abysmal, to be honest. We really, really lacked a goal scorer, and hopefully Benekophobia will address that. But even now, we've got a better striker in, but he's still struggling for service. I think, it's always a 1-1 as well. It's, sometimes a 0-0, but generally for Millwall fans, 1-1 is, if you might as well put a tenner on it before the game kicks off every week. I reckon you'll make a mint. But, it's, so we look threatening. And I would say in the majority of draws, I mean, even this season, the majority of the draws we've had, we have been the better side, and we probably should have won. Against QPR on the first day, we could have won it. They were very good as well. Blackburn, we definitely should have won. West Brom, we could have easily won it. So it's really frustrating, because it's not like we're on a losing streak and the team is hopeless. It's that the team is so close to going on a good run and coming out of games where you every week almost, where we should have won it, we should have done better. But it is just that killer instinct, and then a slight soft underbelly at times. I mean, generally Millwall are really good defensively. We don't concede many. I think we've lost the joint fewest in the league this season, but I think since Rowett's come in, we've drawn more games than any other side in the country, and that is where Millwall are at the moment. And I think it's that lack of killer edge that's really costing us those 3 points every week.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and you touched on that soft underbelly. I remember being at the Millwall Blackburn game earlier this season, I think it was, and yeah, again, it was that. I think it was Millwall yeah, they'd been on top throughout, pushing for that goal, get that goal, and then, I mean, we didn't know then that Ben Brereton Diaz was sort of reborn, but it was that situation of they just sort of seemed to hand over that chance to Rovers.
Yeah.
Rovers put away, and as you said, 1-1 draw, and everyone was sort of walking back from their seats thinking, why didn't I put tenner on beforehand? But you touched on it there, and we'll move on to it now. As you said, the squad, I guess the frustration among Millwall fans a lot of the time at the moment is that they do seem to be so close. We're coming to the business end, as you say, of that 3-year spell under Rowett. This summer's transfer business, I just rifled through, Scott Malone, a permanent deal, that looks like a great business given how good he's been since rejoining on loan. George Long from Hull, Daniel Ballard on loan from Arsenal, George Savile from Borough, Benny Kafobe on loan from Stoke, and Shea Ojo on loan from Liverpool. What did you make of the summer business? And do you think it's enough?
It was the summer business was a bit odd. It was really a transfer window of two halves. I mean, all of those deals you got other than Ojo, I think they were all done by mid-July. Scott Malone, obviously, like you said, he was fantastic last season when we had him on loan from Derby. Previously played for Millwall. I think he really buys into the Millwall ethos. As soon as he joined, he shaves his hair right down. He really gives it all. He's a bit of a flair player. I mean, really at left wing back as well. He's perfect in the role Rowett wants to play him, and he's probably our second most attacking player, which it does tell you a lot about how we attack, to be honest. The rest of them, Daniel Ballard has looked fantastic. Obviously promoted with Blackpool last year to the Championship, and we've got him on loan from this season at Arsenal, and he looks like a top prospect. I think he's started in every league game so far, and I can't see anyone dislodging him. And really, I think he's destined for regular Premier League football. George Savile was a massive fan favourite as well. It's another one who's come back to Millwall. We sold him to Borough actually as our record sale. I think it was around £7 or £8 million a few years ago after he got 12 goals in the season for us from central midfield, and he looked a fantastic player. And obviously he's slightly older now and playing for a few years under a Warnock team, so he's had to change his style. He's been slightly underwhelming since coming back. He's got a couple goals, I think one in the league and one in the cup. But I think he's struggling to adapt at the moment. Obviously, it does take a bit of time to fit in back with the new players and get the system. But Rowett clearly trusts him, and that drive from midfield is something we've really been lacking. And he's shown it at times now. He's starting to get forward, get in the box, and offer a bit more of a threat, which I think is how Millwall fans remember him and what we were hoping from him when we re-signed him. Afobe looks fantastic. I mean, he was obviously out in Turkey last year. He's another one who had also played for Millwall in the past, just a short loan spell when he was at Arsenal. But he's fantastic. I think the fans love him already. He works really, really hard, and he's just quite clearly a step up from the strikers we had before in Bodvarsson, especially last year, who now kind of isn't really around the squad. But the problem for Afobe really is just that service. You can see him so often getting really frustrated where he's making very good runs, putting the defence under a lot of pressure and getting into good positions, and the ball just isn't coming. He's had a slight knock, so he missed a few games over the last month or so. But he's back now, and I really think if we can get service, I mean, he's a proven goal scorer at the level. He's someone who has before got 20, 30 goals in the Championship, and he doesn't really look like he's dropped off that much. I really think it's just about the service. And then Ojo's looked bright. He's not played a lot. He was signed on deadline day, and that's where I think the disappointment comes in from Millwall fans. Is we had all of this business quite early and all quite exciting signings. Players that we knew or players that we had seen and looked really good and definitely looked to improve the squad. And then there was just nothing for the rest of the time from mid-July till deadline day when we brought Ojo in. And I think for some there were clearly weak points. I think a number 10, someone who is that creator in the midfield, is something that the midfield just lacks desperately. Rowett did say he was looking into trying to sign someone in that mould, but I think COVID has hit Millwall particularly hard. Obviously, you can see the majority of these signings are loan signings. We really having to shop around for deals, and I think the club is struggling financially at the moment in terms of investing in the squad and really kicking on. So it's always a lot of free transfers and a lot of loan deals, almost like we're a League One side, really budget-wise. And compared to, we played Fulham earlier in the season, and I think their team, cost a combined total of £200 million, and that's who we're realistically competing with. So it was very frustrating that we didn't get didn't improve in the areas of the pitch where we looked like we should have. We had a number of exciting young players go out on loan as well. The likes of Isaac Alafe, who's gone back to Sutton, and Alex Mitchell was a young centre back who looks bright, and Tyler Bury went on loan to Hartlepool, and he's done really well there, and then has now unfortunately torn his hamstring. I think Millwall fans were hoping maybe to see some of them be blooded in, and that was the reason perhaps we weren't signing as many. But once they all went out on loan and no one came in to replace them, it was slightly disappointing. So the squad's still lacking in certain positions, but I'm not unhappy with any of the signings we've made, really.
Brilliant. Well, I'm interested to sort of pick your brain, as it were, on the midfield area. You talked about the lack of a number 10, and I'd say what I've noticed in a lot of the games this season, particularly with Savile in there now, is he's almost the one asked to produce that moment of magic and that perfect ball. I just wondered what you see as the ideal makeup of the Millwall midfield. Do you see sort of a Savile George Evans duo? What are your thoughts on the options available to Rowett at the moment, and who you'd like to see in there?
It's a hard one. I think the midfield's an odd one because last season we had a bad injury crisis, and really that's happened again this year. We've had a lot of injuries that have limited Rowett's choice in terms of how we can play. But last season it was probably even worse, and especially in the midfield. So I think at one point we literally had one central midfielder fit in our squad. So Rowett kind of went on a bit of a spree bringing in new midfielders. So George Evans, like you mentioned, who is someone who can play centre back as well, but really is a midfielder. Michael Kieftenbeld was brought in. So we added those two, and now we've got Ryan Leonard, Billy Mitchell as well, who can play midfield. George Savile, obviously, as well. George Savile seems to start most games. It was paired with Kieftenbeld early on, and sometimes we were playing kind of a 5-3-2. So that whether that was Evans, who is in there as well, or Leonard, they're all very similar midfielders. Is the problem, I think, for Millwall? They're all very workmanlike, very, very kind of ball-winning midfielder style of player who they don't have the best range of passing between them, but they will be solid. And so much of that burden, like you say, is on Savile then to create and get forward. I personally would like to see Billy Mitchell, our academy product, come through. I'd like to see him play a bit more. I think he looks really well, but he's slightly less experienced, and I think Rowett will trust the likes of Kieftenbeld over him. Ryan Leonard, I'm a big fan of as well, but it's just a very limited midfield, to be honest. I don't really like it when we play three in there because of that they're too similar, really. We're very stodgy, and the passing really slows down. I mean, realistically, you would maybe imagine Rowett might change the formation. And I mean, since he's been in, really, we haven't played a back four at all. And where we're struggling to maybe create and go forward and attack, you think that could potentially be an option, but I think, given the squad he has, I'm not sure who fits into that system. It's quite a tricky one to configure. But for me, I would have a combination of Savile, Leonard, and maybe Billy Mitchell. Kieftenbeld and Evans, I think, are good backups, but they're not quite the quality we're looking for.
Absolutely. We'll move on to a couple more questions about the current squad. Well, two of the players that did come in the summer on loan deals, Benny Kafobe from Stoke City, obviously a proven goal scorer at championship level, and Shea Ojo, who has impressed really on loan spells away from Liverpool in the past. Well, I mean, you talked about them briefly there. I guess Afobe's been involved a lot more than Ojo so far. I think Rowett thinks, well, he's still sort of waiting for Ojo to really prove that fitness to be able to be in there consistently. But do you see, a sort of JED, WALLACE, Afobe, Ojo front three as really the best that Millwall are likely to have to offer for the season moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's definitely where we're heading, and I think that's a really exciting front three. Ojo has looked bright. He played him as a 10, I think against Bristol City at home, and he struggled in the game a bit. He was quite clearly looking to drift out wide. Obviously, he is naturally a wide player, so trying to have that emphasis on him as a 10 wasn't quite working. And similar with Afobe, I think it's been a bit square pegs and round holes so far, especially with the injury. So Afobe, on occasion, has actually played out on the left of the front three when we play in that 5-2-3, and that just clearly hasn't worked. If that sometimes means Matt Smith is up top, and I think if you're playing Matt Smith up top, your wide players really need to be, get to the byline and get the ball in the box. And I think Rowett has quite clearly acknowledged that when Ojo was playing a 10, he was playing a front two of Afobe and Smith, as two out-and-out strikers, which we haven't really seen. So I think them linking up will be very interesting. And towards the end of that Bristol City game, Jed Wallace came off the bench. He'd been out with illness for a bit, and we got a glimpse of the front three as Wallace, Afobe and Ojo. And it did look very exciting. I think when Rowett came in, we adopted this system, and it was very counter-attacking. It was very sit back, contain it, and then hit fast on the break. And I think with those three, with the likes of Malone and Danny McNamara at wing-back supporting, I think that is a very feasible top championship front three that can create a lot of goals and create a lot of problems. Ojo had a fantastic game against West Brom, and they're one of the top sides in the league, and he caused them a lot of problems throughout. And I think that was maybe his first or second game for the Lions. So definitely just a matter of getting fitness for him. But I think that's where we're heading, and I think that if we can get that configuration right and they can all be on form, that should be quite exciting for Millwall fans, and hopefully livening up the games that have been quite dull at times this season.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we do get to see a bit more of those three together moving forward. Moving on to a sort of the back three, Jake Cooper had a few injury issues this season, and then he seems to be out of the team really as a sort of tactical move. He was back in against Barnsley. Do you see him, Hutchinson and Ballard as that real first choice back three that we're likely to see week in, week out now? Or do you think Murray Wallace or George Evans might be slotting in there a bit more?
I think that's the ideal front three that I personally would like to see: Ballard, Hutch, and Jake Cooper. I think Cooper's a fantastic centre back. He didn't start this season well at all, to be honest. I'm sure he'd openly admit that as well, and that was why Rowett made the change to drop him out. He only actually came back into the side because of injury to Scott Malone. So Murray Wallace, who'd usually fill in, had to move to left wing back. So that was almost forced by Rowett that he had to make that change. But I mean, Cooper, as a player for Millwall, he had played it every single game for 2 seasons. Towards the end of last season, he was playing with a dislocated shoulder for a lot of games, playing with injections and just carrying on. So he almost deserves a break. It's one of those, I think he must be, compared to a lot of the other players we have, just absolutely fatigued, who just needs a bit of a breather and a bit of a rest to come back in. We haven't actually seen much of the Hutch, Ballard, Cooper back three just because of injuries this season. Hutch got injured in the first game against QPR and came off in that one and has only really just come back. And that is really linked to Millwall's upturn in form, is Sean Hutchinson coming back in. He just changes our defence massively. And I think Jake Cooper he does rely on Hutchinson a bit. He's obviously a very good defender in his own right, but they have that partnership where when they're both on the pitch together, they just both reach a different level. And I mean, in terms of business, obviously both signed by Neil Harris. I mean, Hutchinson was on a free and Cooper about £200,000 from Reading. And between them, at points they've been 2 of the best centre backs in the league for Millwall. And I've no doubt Jake Cooper will get back to that level. Millwall fans really like Murray Wallace, who's the other option. He's a really honest, hard-working player, and I think a lot of fans are starting to ask why he's not in the Scotland squad, because he's been playing really well for Millwall. He's actually scored a couple goals in the cup as well, one an absolute worldie on his right foot. But for me personally, I think he's a bit more limited than Jake Cooper. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Cooper come back in a few weeks when he's kind of had a bit of a breather and he's ready to come back in. Because I mean, I know Rowett trusts him, and he's obviously a very good player, and obviously with his height, he's a massive threat at set pieces as well. But Murray Wallace is playing well and might keep him out for a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Well, I guess sort of a good issue for Rowett to have at the moment, to have so many options pushing. And we'll move next to sort of Millwall's talisman. There's no denying that Jed Wallace has been that Millwall's star player over the past few seasons. And as you said, he proved his quality by sort of coming off the bench to score the winning penalty against Bristol City just before the international break. There's obviously a lot of talk about his future at the moment. I think it's his contract running down, and there's been links to Celtic, Rangers, Newcastle, and West Ham. That was a Football League World exclusive. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on the situation, really, Ryan. Is it one that you can see having a happy ending for Millwall fans? Do you see a new deal there, or is it really a matter of when and not if Wallace moves on?
Yeah, personally, I'm worried, and I really do think he will leave in the summer. I'm struggling to see him signing a new contract. I mean, Jed Wallace, for me, and I mean, I think it'd be hard to argue against it. He is, one of the best players in the league and has been for 3 or 4 seasons now. He's just, his goals and assists record is unbelievable, and he is Millwall's attacking force and has been for the last 2 seasons. Really, he contributes to almost all of our goals. I think over half of our goals this season, he's either scored or assisted. When he isn't playing, we just don't really look like getting anything. I think he deserves a step up. I mean, he really likes Millwall. He's a really committed player. He's a fan favourite for good reason. He really loves the club. He signed a long-term contract before. I mean, we're a bit of a match made in heaven where, we like to view ourselves as the perennial underdogs. And, he had a bit of hardship. He got a big move to Wolves and it didn't quite work out there, just as they were being taken over by the new ownerships on their rise to the Premier League. And, he kind of had to step back down to League One with Millwall to rebuild his reputation. And he's done that phenomenally. I think for him, he's getting towards the prime of his career. Probably this is his next big contract, or his opportunity really for the biggest contract of his life. And he deserves a step up. He deserves a shot at the Premier League. I think he was on the NTT 20 pod a little while ago, and they were saying the only 2 players who've contributed more goals are Ben Rama and Ben Dia. And he made a bit of a joke saying, they're both in the Premier League now. So, that's obviously where his ambitions are. And I think he's improved so much as a player in the last few seasons. I think when he was first at Millwall, his finishing wasn't great. His delivery wasn't great. And you can see he's worked on those so much. And he can play as a striker. Rowett often plays him up front, play wide. He can play as a 10. And he's just come on so much as a player. And I think he's getting to that stage where if he can get a new contract somewhere else in the summer, which I'm sure he will if it's slower end Premier League side, he will take it with both hands. I mean, I can't see him going to West Ham. I think he has such an affection with the club and such an affection with the fans that I couldn't see him doing that. But definitely, I can't see why there wouldn't be interest. There was chat about Aston Villa a few seasons ago, and it's the big shame for Millwall now. Really, is we've got a player who was valued at around £15 million a few seasons ago. Would double our record sale, would bring in a lot of much needed money to the club, and instead it looks like we're going to be losing him for free, which is that I think, as much as losing him, and I do think that would put us in a tricky situation in terms of trying to stay up in the league, to be honest. The main issue I think for the club is losing him for free and not getting the chance to cash in when we could have.
You talk about losing him for free there then, and the chance to cash in. Do you think there's any chance that Mill will accept an offer in January of a couple of £1 million? Do you think that is something that could happen, or do you think he is so tied to the club's success on the pitch that it would almost be writing off this season's promotion push or playoff push by doing that? What do you think are the chances?
I think it's hard to see us letting him go in January. I think he is so tied to our, like you said, to our any attacking threat we do, to winning points. He's so valuable to that I think a couple £1 million probably isn't worth it in that sense. Obviously, that depends where we are when it comes to January, and if we're it's a hard one. If we're looking kind of mid-table come January, then selling him could see us go on a slide. If we're looking to push for the playoffs, then we definitely need him. I think the only way he would stay is if we make a playoff push, and even if we miss out on promotion. But if we show him and we look like we have forward momentum and we look a credible threat to gain promotion, then maybe he stays. But at this point, I can't see the club letting him go in January, and I can't see him wanting to do that. To be honest, like I said before, he does have a real affection with the club, and he has always put the club first. He's always been very vocal about how much he loves playing at Millwall, and the respect he has for the club. So I couldn't see him kind of jumping ship early, maybe just to cash in.
So no exit looks likely for Jed Wallace then in January. But what sort of transfers could we see? I guess one of the phrases we've said so much already in sort of 25 minutes we've been on, Ryan, is the frustration amongst Millwall fans sometimes is that this squad looks so nearly there. You touched on the sort of fragile financial situation the club are in. Talking about the January window, then what sort of window do you think Millwall need, and what sort of window do you think they'll have?
I think we definitely need to bring in maybe at least one player. Like I mentioned, we have a problem with injuries at the moment. It happened last season. I mean, at one point last season, I think we had 8 or 9 first team players out for over a month. And this season we've had it again. Obviously, Hutchinson's been out.
Yeah.
Connor Mahoney's been out. I think 5 or 6 players have been out really already this season. So with our budget, it's hard to create a lot of depth. We have depth in certain positions, but we are struggling in others. I think the main thing, and I think the reason we didn't bring more in the summer, is the club really needs to move some players on before they have the budget to bring anyone in.
Yeah.
The likes I mentioned before, John Daddy Budvarson, who has had offers but has turned them down. So obviously that is a wage issue there. And maybe Millwall might see themselves taking a hit on that one. I think he might even still have another year on his contract, or at least be gone at the end of this season. But they could really do with getting rid of him early. Ben Thompson as well doesn't really look like anywhere near the squad. He's another academy product who fans really like. Some fans really like, and there was high expectations for him, but it's just never really worked. And I know Portsmouth are quite interested in him. He was on loan there a couple of seasons ago, and the fans really liked him. But he doesn't seem to be anywhere near the squad this season. So potentially he might move as well. So January will need to be busy in both directions if anything is going to happen. If we can get a few players out, again, that number 10 spot, finding someone who can be a bit more versatile in a attacking midfield sense, whether it's a striker who can play behind another striker, someone, say, look at like Corley Woodrow, obviously at Barnsley is a prime target, not maybe a prime target for Millwall, but the ideal sort of candidate for me in terms of a player who can play as a striker and as a 10 and do both those jobs. I think Millwall definitely need that in terms of just having another option up front, but then also someone who can create. If we can kill 2 birds with one stone in that sense, that'd be massive. But it might be a matter of getting another loan. But we've already got 3 loans this season, and they're all starters. I don't think Rowett has ever been too keen on filling the squad with loan players. So. Our January will be so dependent on whether or not we can move on those unwanted players, and if we can't, then I'm pretty sure it'll be as is for the rest of the season.
Okay, brilliant. We'll shift now our focus to the upcoming game this weekend. Millwall host Luton Town at the Den on Saturday. The Hatters have had a sort of inconsistent start to the season, but as we saw with that, quite shocking 5-0 win against Coventry City not long ago, they are a dangerous team. Ryan, will Millwall fans be worried about this, or is it a situation that they're looking, this could be a perfect sort of stepping stone to sort of start the period after the international break and really try and attack that top 6 with a win?
Yeah, I think the focus definitely has to be just to build on the form we've got at the moment. Obviously, coming into this one with 2 wins in a row, 7 unbeaten. The atmosphere of the season has changed with those last 2 wins. I mean, now on an unbeaten run, we've got something to cling on to. It looks like we're starting to get our home form back, which is something that during the season with no fans we really struggled with, as a number of teams did, but more so at the Den, and crowds were starting to dwindle with the style of football we're playing this season. But with a couple wins under a belt, I'm sure it will start to pick up again.
Yeah.
Like you say, Luton are so inconsistent. I mean, since they've come up back to the Championship, really, they've been quite like that. They've always looked to play really nice football. Nathan Jones is obviously a really good manager, and he has a certain style that sometimes really works and sometimes doesn't. I think a lot of us, I know certainly a lot of Mill fans I know, were actually looking to Luton and their recruitment that they did in the summer, and were quite envious of it. They were getting players that a lot of us had said, why aren't we going for players like that? They don't have much of a budget either, and they seem to be doing quite a lot with very little. And Millwall seem to struggle to do that exact same thing. I mean, it's not necessarily sitting on the fence these days, but I mean, I wouldn't look past a draw. I think we've been quite good at this point in time at shutting teams out. I think with Hutchinson back in, we're defensively very sound. So it will just be a matter of what defence turns up for Luton. Is it their 5-0 win or 5-0 loss defence? If we can start well, we will win. And it's just a matter really of taking our chances, as it is with every game, taking our chances and really building on our current form.
Sure. Well, and just shifting, I guess your final prediction of the day. 11th now, 3 points off the playoffs. Do you think, as a Millwall fan first, do you think you guys still got sort of a real serious chance of making the playoffs this season?
It's a really hard one. I think we do. I think before the season, I would have said we definitely do. And now that we're turning it around, I think we do have a good chance of making it. I think we've got a settled squad. There's a lot of churn in the Championship, and sometimes it takes teams half a season to get going. Millwall, we're never the quickest of starters, but once we build form, we do kind of carry it with us. So I think we do have a good chance, and that run, if it does happen, will be based on defensive solidity. It won't be about wiping the floor with teams 2 or 3-0. It will be hard fought 1-0 wins that does it. The main concern really is injuries. If we have another injury crisis, as we have done this season and had done last, then the squad's just not strong enough to support that. Reinforcements in January might help, but if we can now get, like we said before, Ojo and Afobe and Jed to click, Mason Bennett will come back from injury and add another threat. So there are the bones of a good team there, and we're getting back to being hard to beat and hard to break down. So I think we still do have a push for the championship, for the playoffs. Obviously, it's early doors still. It's the championship can swing in 10 or 15 games massively. So I think we're still outside shouts, I think, for the playoffs, but you might see us finishing 7th or 8th again and narrowly missing out.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Ryan. It's been a pleasure talking to you about Millwall today. As I said at the start, guys, make sure you like and subscribe Football League World TV on YouTube, and look out for the EFL debate show later, where we'll be talking about whether Mick McCarthy should be sacked. Thank you.